Hey everybody, my name is Paul Esden Jr. I am Boy Green, the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. Welcome to my YouTube channel right here, youtube.com/BoyGreen25 for all kinds of New York Jets goodies. And boy, it's great to be back after a little mini vacay in Mississippi where, by the way, Wi-Fi was not possible. So now we got to do a lot of catching up, and we're going to do that with an absolute stud buffet. His name is Zack Rosenblatt, and he covers all things New York Jets for The Athletic. He was the guy who replaced Connor Hughes, so let's bring him in. Let's introduce you guys to him. You've been reading his stuff, of course, and let's bring him here on the show. Zack Rosenblatt. What's happening, Zack?
Not much, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So first off, I got to ask you, how does it feel walking around in the Athletic shoes? I've known your rep, and we've done a little bit of stuff together before on my radio show doing some Giants, and now you're in the Jets waters. You have a couple of weeks here under your belt. How does it feel, man?
Yeah, you said how does it feel to be walking in athletic shoes? I've never felt athletic in my shoes before.
So it's good to be on the writing side then. I'm glad that's worked out.
No, it's been really cool so far. It's I just like the way I've always liked the way the Athletic operates. I'm happy to be there and getting to write some quality stuff. And in this fan base that you and I have talked offline a little bit, and fan base is clearly really passionate. And Jets Twitter is a wild place, and it's been cool getting to know fans, and their passion is a good thing because that means they're interested in what people are writing about them, which is good for business. So I'm enjoying it so far for sure.
Well, Zack, I got to say that it was I've been a fan of your work since before you were at The Athletic and covering the Jets. So as soon as you came in, I'm like, great, now I've got a perfect excuse to read every single thing you put out there. But I have to tell you, and I want to kind of know the genesis, maybe you can reveal that your very first article for The Athletic, your introduction of interviewing yourself. I'm going to be honest, I've seen a lot of things. That was the most unique thing I have ever seen in my life before. What kind of inspired that?
Yeah, The Athletic, they told me that they do those like intro letters is what they call them, to like introduce yourself to the subscribers. And I don't particularly love talking about myself. And so I thought I just wanted to have fun with it. And then I thought of, I saw a few months ago that Donald Glover actually did that for like a magazine where he like interviewed himself, and his was way weirder than mine.
Yeah.
Mine was more like to introduce me than anything. I just tried having a little fun with it, but I don't know. It just felt like a different way to do it. And it also like those are supposed to serve as like to introducing who I am to the readers. And I have that kind of sense of humor, and I try to have fun with the things I write and the way I go about it. I mean, if you see me on Twitter, I'm joking on there a lot. That's kind of how I roll. So I wanted to introduce my writing style and my personality, and it kind of just came to me randomly one night, and I'm like, you know what? Because I was trying to figure out what to write about myself, and I don't know, I didn't want to feel too self-important, and not like other people are when they do it, but I don't know, I just felt like, I don't know, I wanted to do something different. So, and it seemed like it got a pretty good reaction. There were some people who were like, you need to be more serious about the Jets or something like that, and I'm like, everybody relax. It's fine.
Exactly. Just be yourself. I think that's going to work out just fine. So, by the way, I think that was great. And I think, quite frankly, I'm speaking on behalf of the Jets community. We got a lot of crazy fans out there. We talked about that earlier, but this community is crazy. And I think I can speak at least for me and the ones I've seen so far. We are really enjoying a fresh perspective on the beat. And with all the revolving doors, which is kind of crazy, New York Daily News, Antoine Staley, a shout out to him. He'll be on the show in the coming weeks. But all these new guys coming in, I think it's phenomenal. Well, let's get off of Saturday, green and white scrimmage last night. Zack, you were there. You were in the trenches, okay? Not only asking the questions at the Saleh presser, but giving us the play-by-play. Read that this morning to kind of get a full scope because the Jets did not televise it or have it live streaming anywhere. So you were our eyes and ears on everything that was happening. So let me go right off the top there. And what about Zach Wilson, the straw that stirs the drink, Rosenblatt? How did he look?
Yeah, I thought he had a really good practice. We all kept track his stats. I wasn't the only one. And if you just look on paper, it doesn't sound great, but it didn't tell the whole story. I think people who were there know that. He was looking really good, especially to start out. I think as the night went on, there was a lot of mistakes happening, receivers dropping balls, stuff like that. But he was pretty on the money. He was flashing some of that athleticism that everybody knows he can do, improvisation. He had a few throws that, there was one in particular that like would have been phenomenal. It didn't wind up counting, but he like threw a deep ball like 30, 40 yards in the air to Garrett Wilson and like right by the end zone. Sauce Gardner had good coverage on it. He still got it to Wilson. Wilson caught it, but he couldn't get both feet in. But that, like, it was that kind of throw that, like, number one, that he's willing to take those and not afraid to take those, and number two, that he's like really able to get as close as he did. I think that was pretty impressive. And yeah, the first drive so for the scrimmage, they did like a couple like regular like move the ball drives, and then they did like some red zone and stuff like that. On the first move the ball drive, I think he was 5 for 5. All of his passes were on the money. They worked their way upfield. Easy touchdown to Tyler Conklin, 10 yards. And yeah, I think they still definitely need to work on the red zone stuff. His interception that he threw was pretty bad. He kind of just like tried forcing it in there. He didn't really look at. I think he kind of like lasered in on somebody and he pretty much threw it to the defender. So you don't like seeing those mistakes. If he's gonna throw a pick, you'd rather it was like him taking a risk down the field than in the flat easy throw kind of thing. But I came away from that feeling optimistic. It's still like too early to say like is he ready to take the leap because he's only been going against Jets guys, and I think once we see him in joint practices and some preseason stuff, really once the season starts is when you really can evaluate. But for my sake, since I haven't really watched that much of him, I've been trying to reserve judgment until I see him go against somebody other than Jets players. But Zach Wilson was the biggest takeaway. I thought he was pretty good in the scrimmage. I think he's had like 3 of his last 4 practices have been pretty good. There was like one bad one in there. I've been saying, he hasn't been like over the course of all of training camp. I don't think he's been bad. I don't think he's been great. He's been like somewhere in the middle. You can take that what you want, but that's what I would say about him.
Well, coming off the green and white scrimmage, Zach, that's the one point I want to go to, because a couple of years ago, if a quarterback was doing well, but the only problem was, and we're just talking about the scrimmage in particular, that the only problem was drops, a lot of his Jet fans would have overreacted because, a couple of years ago, they were trotting out Jermaine Kearse, the ghost of insert David Clowney. I mean, the guys that are trotting out there when they're driving, they're like, oh boy, that's because they don't have anybody. Now it seems like even though there was these drops, it seemed like Robert Saleh credited that to some level of depth perception in MetLife as opposed to Florham Park where it's happening. I made the comparison here in Syracuse, the Carrier Dome versus your normal basketball venue that maybe you're shooting in. So maybe there's some credence to that. But I think the thing that I think a lot of Jet fans feel this time around is, wait a second, there are a lot of talented guys. Okay, they'll have drops, but more often than not, they'll probably catch those passes. I don't know if that's a fair assessment to make or not.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say like Corey Davis, he's had a couple jobs throughout camp, and so has Jeff Smith. But yeah, generally the receivers have been pretty good. So maybe there's something to that. I think that's kind of a thing we'll wait and see. And if it becomes a problem, then we can start worrying. But I mean, to your point, like it's quite clear how talented this group is around Zach. Even on the offensive line, they finally had all 5 of them playing. Like they didn't play all night, but like the first couple series, the whole offensive line pretty much got every snap, and he had the most time that he's had all of camp. And then you have those receivers who I'm sure you've talked about a lot between Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis, and Elijah Moore. Sure. Tight ends, I mean, Tyler Conklin looks like he's going to be a legit weapon for them. And then the running backs, I'm very high on Breece Hall. So there's a lot. All the pieces are around him, and it's going to be a thing that it's going to be a talking point I keep saying, and everybody keeps saying, but it just comes down to if Zach can execute it and if these guys can live up to their talent. Because talent-wise, this has got to be one of the more talented offensive groups they've had in a long time, I imagine. So
there's no question. So I wasn't there, but Zach, I heard you documenting it on Twitter, which, by the way, great follow. Go follow Zack Rosenblatt, obviously, on Twitter. The Breece Hall chants, is it Breece? Are we getting like Breece? What kind of chant are we getting here when I'm hearing beat reporters talking about this?
It's the first one. It's like a Bruce type chant. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, and that seems to be infectious with people. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like that's going to be how it goes for him for the season. It's a cool chant because you can like. It's one of those things. Sometimes you can't really tell what they're saying or if they're booing, but with that one, you can tell that they're saying Breece.
Yeah,
that's. And good. I think they're gonna be saying, I know it's early and
sure,
hasn't really been tackling to the ground and all that stuff, but he just like looks up. He's big, but he moves like way quicker for a guy that size than you would expect. He hits the holes. He seems like be a really smart, heady runner. He runs with power. Like he's better pass catcher than I realized. Like I've just been very impressed with him and I'm high on Michael Carter too, but I like Breece. Like I keep saying, I think his ceiling is offensive rookie of the year. Whether he gets that and if he gets the touches to get that, we'll see. But like that's his ceiling and his talent levels. And part of that is this rookie class is kind of strange because there's not really any quarterbacks that are real competition. But I'm very interested to see what level of like touches he gets this year.
If he gets Offensive Rookie of the Year, I don't care what the circumstance. Phenomenal. Because, by the way, the Jets in their history have never had an Offensive Rookie of the Year. They've had plenty of defensive guys, and just a couple years ago, Sheldon Richardson, but they have never had an Offensive Rookie of the Year, so that'd be pretty cool and interesting to hear. It could be a sewing. He is one of the favorites, depending on your, booking, place you like to, dabble in. That's up to each and every individual, but wink, Breece Hall's up there if you want to get your money in there. You did mention that the offensive line didn't get the full reps throughout the night. Robert Saleh mentioned it was a bit of a pitch count. Big deal, no deal? What do you make of that?
Yeah, no deal. I think they're just really working Mekhi and George Fant back into playing shape. I think especially with Mekhi, like he's been the last couple of practices, he played pretty much every rep and he looked pretty good start to finish. Like, there was a day where it was hot out and I think some fans caught him like throwing up on the sideline. I don't think that's really abnormal, honestly. And he didn't miss any plays. So he's having trouble with the heat, but so am I. So I can't blame him for that. But I've been encouraged by Mekhi. The stamina thing is the longer it gets into training camp and as you get to the season, maybe you start feeling a little more concerned. Like, can he play all 4 quarters? But maybe that's why they're looking at a guy like Duane Brown. Like maybe you don't want to rotate offensive linemen, but if you have a guy like that, then you feel a little better about like, okay, maybe Mekhi does need a breather for a little bit. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I'm just saying like the idea that they have somebody like Duane Brown to fill in potentially would be interesting. And yeah, Fant, he's been further behind Mekhi and coming back, but he's starting to get close to full reps. And Saleh said that. I asked him at the press conference last night about how like it seemed like last night Zach had more time to work than before. Like, does he feel like the offensive line's hitting his stride? And he's like, yeah, we haven't really had a chance for those 5 guys to really work that much together. And we think as they do, like they'll be a lot better off. But that also is pretty telling about the depth and why they need somebody like Duane Brown, because depth is a real problem, especially at tackle. Connor McDermott got hurt. I don't know how serious it was, but he hasn't been looking good in camp. And I don't know if you want to trust Chuma Edoga as like a starter if it comes to it. Because you have to. I would put odds, like maybe it's unfair, but I would put odds on one of Mekhi or George not playing all 17 games, if not both of them. So you need a plan for that, I would say. So
that's very fair, Zach. You want to know what? Let's look at the old history books. Oh, wait. Mekhi, back to the George Fant, have never started a full season in their careers. Now, again, Mekhi, short sample size, but still, it's never happened before. So I don't think you're going on that much of a limb to say, maybe if you squint, maybe it doesn't happen. And again, make sure, reminder to all our viewers right now, make sure you like the video, hit subscribe down below, and follow Zack Rosenblatt for Pete's sake. And Zach, let's stop with the dilly-dallying. We've been dancing with each other this entire interview. It's time for you to break the news. Duane Brown to the Jets. Go ahead. Go viral, Zach. Break it. Let's go. What do we got?
I wish I could. But they sound pretty optimistic about something happening. The surprising thing is that, that he would agree to be like a backup at the.
Yeah.
He was a Pro Bowler just last year.
Yeah.
He is 37 years old, so maybe he sees it as a chance. Maybe they do some sort of rotation thing. Like, I don't know what they're pitching to him. I imagine he's not going to come for like the minimum. He's too good for that. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. Like I've seen some people think it says how they feel about how Mekhi or George are in their recovery. I don't really think that's it. They were looking at Riley Rife earlier in the offseason.
Yeah.
I think they've been talking to him, Duane Brown, for a while by the sounds of it. I don't know. I think it would be a home run signing, especially if he's agreeing to come as the backup, the third tackle. Like, you can't do much better than that, both in terms of what he brings as a player and then, he's a veteran guy who's been through it. And if anybody can get through to Mekhi as like a motivational veteran guy, like they don't have a guy like that on the offensive line. And I think that would be very good for Mekhi if he was around, honestly. So
let's add that additional nugget from your teammate in the trenches there, Rich Cimini. He dropped that nugget this morning in his Sunday morning column for ESPN. That was the thing, because the thing about Duane Brown and kind of the argument on Jets social media over the last bunch of months, if they were going to go in the veteran tackle market, let's put Reef and Brown up against each other. As Reef, okay, he's played both left and right tackle. Now, he's not anywhere near as good. Never had an All-Pro, never had a Pro Bowl, versus Duane Brown, who's had 3 All-Pros, 1 first team, 2 second team, 5 Pro Bowls, and obviously 203 games of starts. He's not a backup. He's been a starter for his entire career. So that was kind of the argument. But the Rich Cimini nugget from this morning is the pitch, apparently, according to Rich, to Duane Brown is to be a backup, and a backup that can play both sides. And obviously, I guess if Duane wasn't cool with that, I don't think he would have showed up to even entertain the scrimmage. So that's a fascinating nugget for a guy who's exclusively played left tackle his entire 14-year career in the NFL.
Yeah, another way they could approach it, and maybe this is how they're thinking too, is if Mekhi goes down, then you can put George Fant at right tackle too, as well, I think, or vice versa. Like, I think
Sure.
that they would have flexibility with those three guys. Like, I don't think you necessarily need to say like, all right, Duane Brown's in at right tackle, unless they really don't want to be moving guys around, which I know some people have that approach where like you don't want to get worse at two spots in theory, kind of thing.
Right.
So I don't know. That'll be a big part of it. It's a very fascinating idea, Duane Brown. Like, I think when we've all talked about veteran tackles and you go and look at the list of free agents, you kind of skip over Duane Brown, thinking like, I don't know if he would come and be a backup. But he was literally a Pro Bowler last year. So
yeah,
whether he deserved it, I don't know. Because sometimes like just names get in on the offense.
Right.
But
12th alternate, this or that. Right.
You'd feel very good, and that would be like that's like the last remaining thing. Like, I think Joe Douglas has done a really good job of like just doing all the right things this offseason and hitting all the needs they have in this roster. And the one thing you didn't really address was offensive tackle. And then you bring in a guy like that. If they had signed him in March or signing him now, I think the fan base would have been happy. So it's very interesting in for a lot of reasons. And I'm very curious to see if they do sign him, what the contract looks like. Because like I said, I can't imagine he would come for the minimum. Maybe there's some incentives in there if he gets a certain amount of starts or something like that. Yeah, that's definitely something that we're going to be keeping an eye on. I imagine they would want to get that done pretty soon so you can get him in the mix. So maybe we find out sometime this week. But yeah, I'm very interested to see what happens there.
All right, Zach, I know your main job is to cover the New York Jets for The Athletic, but I need you to try on a different hat for me today for this interview. I need you to be my interpreter. I'm going to tell you something that a coach or player said at a press conference. You tell me what they really meant. You cut through the BS and you tell me what they meant. So let's go to the first one. What did you make of Robert Saleh pounding the gosh darn table for Joe Flacco? He is a starting quarterback. He had a little verve, a little chutzpah, if I may, in the middle of this thing. What the heck did that mean? Does he just love Joe Flacco as QB2? Mike White trade possibility? What does all this mean?
I think part of it, and I wasn't here for this, but I know last year the Jets got a lot of flack for not bringing in a veteran backup. Ugh. And I think Saleh was getting annoyed last year when he kept getting asked about that by the media. Okay. I wasn't there again. Talking to people. And so just me as like a newbie and still interpreting how Saleh approaches press conferences and stuff, like I think it's possible there's some overcompensation from how things were last year. I think, another part of it is I don't think him just talking up Joe Flacco is going to, pump up his trade value in reality. Everybody knows what Joe Flacco is now. And at this point in his career, he's 37. Like it wouldn't really get much for him in a deal, but I don't know, just talking him up isn't, I just think a lot of it has to do with him expressing confidence in his backup quarterback and kind of pushing back against all the narrative from last year and things like that. Flacco has been very good in practice. I still think people have to remember, like, if Flacco is starting for the season, like their odds of winning still go down. Like that's still
right.
Usually a backup quarterback is back for a reason. Like there's some exceptions, obviously, but if Zach Wilson gets hurt or if Joe Flacco has to start at some point, it means something went wrong. So.
Not good. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but with that being said, there's been a lot with it because now the Jets are dealing with a first world problem. They have not dealt with this for 20 years. In terms of getting to that final 53, that puzzle they're trying to put together, and there's only 53 puzzle pieces that fit on the board. Now, there may be a lot of cool ones that they want to jam in there, but no matter how much they jam, that's just not going to fit. So I have to ask you, Zach, that one thing that's been kind of discussed and thrown around is, man, if you have two quarterbacks on your roster, you have an expanded practice squad, you're able to protect players on a week-to-week basis, you could get whoever your third quarter, Kurt, or whoever random person you want as your third guy, and you protect him. You only keep two on the 53. That will give wiggle room for defensive line, wide receiver, whatever position you want. Is there anything to be said, or just the Jets, who have been effusive with their praise for both Mike White, Joe Flacco, and Zach Wilson, obviously for that matter, are they just going to keep the three and say, hey, nothing? Or is there any way they could flip? White's probably the easiest one to flip, I would imagine, over Flacco with the guarantees in the contract. Is there anything there? Is that just all made up nonsense on social media?
As of right now, I still think Mike White would be on the 53. I think they view him as like a developmental third guy. I think that's kind of like an old school approach that teams used to do. They would have, the two quarterbacks, then you have like a younger guy you're developing.
Right.
And the Eagles used to do that in particular, where they would develop a guy and then they would flip him for a good draft pick when he like showed something, kind of thing. So I imagine that's what I liked with Mike White, maybe a quarterback desperate team. A team loses a backup or their starter in the preseason and they come calling the Jets. I don't think Mike White would make it through waivers, so that's why I don't know if they would try to sneak him through in theory. But like you said, like they're in an interesting spot that maybe they haven't been in a while, where they are going to have to cut some good players. guys that are going to get picked up elsewhere. So they have to really like decide like, can we get this? It's going to be a lot of like the game of can we get this guy through the practice squad and things like that. And so you don't want to, if you view a guy as like a roster build good player, you don't want to just get rid of him if you don't have to. So maybe they shop Mike White around, but my gut says they keep him on the roster.
All right, I need you to go back to interpreter Zack Rosenblatt for a second. Denzel Mims, I want to be a gosh darn starting wide receiver. Well, Denzel, I want $1 million. But sometimes things just don't happen. You look at Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, Braxton Berrios. Where the hell is this dude started? So that has led some people to say perhaps trade Waters. The Cowboys have a wide receiver injury. The Broncos have a wide receiver injury. And spoiler alert, more are probably coming. Denzel Mims, trade him out. So the interpreting part of this for the Mims part, so I want to be a starting wide receiver. What else is he going to say? But the fact of the matter is, could that potentially indicate some frustration? Like, man, I want to be a starter in it. And he mentioned some things like, I mean, it's up to the coaches whether they're going to play me. But sometimes when you hear a quote and see it, it doesn't always mean what you think it does. So Rosenblatt, interpret for us. Denzel Mims frustration, trade possibility. What do you think?
You know, it's a good question. I definitely think trade possibility. I even lean toward that. I mean, he just hasn't even been able to really get many reps with the first team. Even when he has gotten reps with the first team, he almost never has gotten targeted by Zach Wilson, I believe. So it's not like he's really had much like chemistry building with Zach. A lot of his reps have come with Mike White. He has shown some, that he's such an intriguing player. Like he physically looks impressive. He's extremely athletic. He's still young. He's, on a rookie salary, all that stuff. So there's definitely appeal there. I don't think, whatever they get for him is not going to be enough from the fan base's eyes. I think that's pretty clear. It seems like they're pretty high on him still. I don't know. It's a very interesting spot. Like I don't know if he's frustrated. I could understand if he was, because he, when he walked into the wide receiver room this offseason, you see, Corey Davis, who just signed a huge contract last year. You see Elijah Moore drafted in the second round last year. You see Garrett Wilson drafted in the first round. You see Braxton Berrios just signed a 2-year deal. He's making more money than him. Like this has all happened since he was drafted. With the new staff that wasn't here when he got drafted and all that stuff. So there's just like all the evidence is pointing to him not like being on this team. I don't know necessarily if they would cut him. Maybe they would. It doesn't help that he doesn't contribute really on special teams. You kind of want that in like your 5th or 6th receiver. I think he's probably too talented / too big of a name to just cut straight up. Maybe I'm wrong about that. If they don't view him very highly, maybe I'm wrong about that. But so that's why I imagine they're going to try and do a trade. I think the kind of thing that would make a lot of sense is a player for player swap, where you trade him from another team who also has a guy like that, who's like, has talent, but it's kind of worn out his welcome in that place. And you see that a lot in the preseason. So I imagine that's what Joe Douglas is looking for. If you can't get a day 3 pick, if you can get a player that contribute at a position you need, whether that's offensive line or some depth at linebacker or whatever. Like I that's the kind of path I see.
Well, Zach, if I was giving you a report card, A+ for creativity, are there any names, perhaps, or teams that, the Jets have a couple of remaining needs if you squint? Again, you've mentioned it a few times in your piece, maybe a veteran defensive tackle. They really kind of ignored that after letting Foley Fatukasi leave. They didn't really add anybody of any significance to the room. Solomon Thomas, of course, a couple guys like that, but nothing that really moves the needle. Could that be a factor? Is there another player team, Zach, that you could share, perhaps?
I'm going to dig into it before the end of camp and try and come up with some ideas. I mean, one name that intrigued me that came out the other day, and I don't know if he's a great fit scheme-wise, but Tevin Jenkins, it sounds like, is kind of already wearing out his welcome in Chicago, and clearly there's some issues there if they're already shopping him, and I don't know what it'd take to get a guy they just picked in like the 2nd round last year or whatever it was, but I don't know, like taking flyers on offensive linemen with talent is never a bad idea. And so like something like that is like where my head is at. And yeah, I think defensive linemen, there's always like, there's so many defensive linemen out there. There's always like some interesting ones getting cut around roster cuts. So I imagine they can find one like that. Or if there's a receiver that they like and they just want to swap receivers, the Eagles with Jalen Reagor, like he's a young guy who is kind of like, seems like he's on his way out in Philly. Like, I don't know, maybe you swap 2 troubled receivers for each other. Like that's the kind of thing you look for. If Joe Douglas making a trade, you hope it's for somebody with like a ceiling to be better than what he has shown in his current establishment. Because if he's good in his current place, he's not getting cut anyway, that kind of thing. So it's going to be somebody who also has had like a similar career to Denzel, and you hope that this staff can turn them around, kind of thing.
I think the Jet fans would be crossing their fingers. This one happened a few years ago. Not sure if you remember this one, Zach, just outside of the beat, but the Jets flipped Calvin Pryor, the Louisville Slugger, as he was called, and they flipped him to some guy named Demario Davis, who they originally drafted and let go, and he had a Pro Bowl season from there. Well, what the hell? And then they didn't re-sign him. Then he went to the Saints. He's been a superstar. Of course, that's just the Jets thing to happen. But perhaps that could be one of those things that you keep an eye out for. Let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball. Zach, I need your insight there. You've been at camp. Okay, Jordan Whitehead starting. Spoiler alert. But who the hell is starting next to him? Is it LaMarcus Joyner? I saw the Will Parks toe drag swag pick. People, I'm sure, inside the organization are like, please, Ashton Davis, for the love of everything that's holy, can you be the guy? There's a lot of names. Will Parks, Elijah Riley, a bunch of dudes. Like, who is the guy that starts opposite of Jordan Whitehead?
Yeah, I'd say LaMarcus Joyner is probably pretty locked in as the starter.
Okay.
I think Jason Pinnock, I think, is a guy that I really like.
Yeah.
He's shown some flashes. I think that he could be like the long-term guy, if not this year. LaMarcus Joyner's a little older, coming off an injury, stuff like that. But yeah, I'd say, maybe the depth isn't amazing at safety just because there's so much unproven behind him, and Ashton Davis really hasn't lived up to, his draft billing yet. But Jordan Whitehead, honestly, I think he's going to go down as one of the better signings like around the league just because it flew so under the radar and the Bucs kind of let him go. He's really impressed me. I think he's kind of leading that defense already. So him and both DJ Reed were both really smart signings and have impressed me so far.
Zach, I know you weren't here last year, but I have to ask. Carl Lawson, who returned from, he just hit, I think, just semi-recently, the year ago, the anniversary of his ruptured Achilles. But so last year, from all the people inside the building, they say, Paul, this guy was the best guy in camp. It wasn't close. He was fantastic. And obviously an Achilles is a super serious injury. You were not here at camp last year. But does he look like the real deal? Does he look like this crazy freak? This obviously he's built like a Greek god that was chiseled from stone. But does it actually? There's sometimes people that look like that and they can't do diddly squat on the field. Has he looked as good as advertised?
Yeah, he's looked pretty impressive. I think part of it is there's been a lot of reps where George Fant isn't in there, and then he's going against Connor McDermott, and he almost immediately gets a sack on him.
Right.
So you have to factor that into the judgment. But yeah, I mean he's. As Zach Wilson said it, he's spent a little bit too much time in the backfield with me or whatever he said.
I love that comment. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what they need from him. They need that guy. They've been hyping up, and I think it's fair, the depth they have at defensive end, and they have a lot of talent there. I don't know if a lot of it's proven sack guys other than Carl Lawson. So you kind of need him you want him to be the guy as an edge rusher coming off the edge and pressuring the quarterbacks consistently. And that's what they paid him for. And I think he's getting pretty close to 100%, I would say. He's looking pretty good in camp. They use a pretty heavy rotation, so he won't necessarily have to be overworked or anything like that. But yeah, I'd say he's lived up to what they need him to be so far in camp.
All right, Jack, let's get a couple of rapid fires before we get you out of here. Sauce, I know he's a rookie, but real deal. And also, I don't know if you saw the Carl Lawson clip. He did the interview on NFL Network, and they said, hey, Sauce, Ahmad. Okay, he's got to earn that Sauce nickname around here, pal. The same thing the Cincinnati football staff seemed to say in the build-up to the draft. What you make of that? And also, is Sauce the real deal? Does he look like this lanky, crazy alien freak hovering over there at corner that's going to be able to make an immediate impact?
Yeah, I thought the comment was pretty funny, and I get a veteran because Sauce does like to talk, and he's pretty confident and stuff like that. So you like a veteran kind of putting a rookie in his place a little bit. Maybe.
Yeah, that's nice.
He's honestly, I know it's all positive stuff. I guess that's training camp. I remember the Jets before. Maybe it wasn't always like this. I don't know. But Sauce has been really impressive. Like you mentioned, I've never seen a guy that looks like him physically. He's so long and lanky and athletic and tough. And I don't know. I haven't really seen him give up almost anything. He wins one-on-one battles pretty consistently, even against guys like Elijah Moore. I think he's a little aggressive with his hands, so I'm curious to see if that becomes an issue at some point. But yeah, I don't know. I'm very impressed with him. They're doing the whole charade of him versus Breece Hall or whatever. Ultimately, he's going to start, whether that's right away or not. I think Breece Hall's a good player too. I'm
just kidding. Yeah. It's gonna be Sauce over him, right?
Yeah. But Sauce has impressed me quite a bit. Yeah.
All right. And by the way, so you said you haven't seen him give up much. Is the 0 touchdowns allowed record still intact?
I believe so. And he was the one covering Garrett Wilson on that throw yesterday that I mentioned.
Oh, so he was hoping that second foot didn't get down, I bet. Okay.
Well,
all right.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, a couple other quickies here. First off, just overall, who has stood out to you? Who is a Zack Rosenblatt guy that you've been like, wow, that is impressive, perhaps? And again, I know you kind of came into this relatively blind, so to speak. So whether good or bad on guys, but who's the guy that stood out to you that maybe surprised you?
No, like as of like a few days ago, the two guys I've been saying were offense Elijah Moore, defense DJ Reed, were like the standouts for me, and Jordan Whitehead right behind on defense. I think Tyler Conklin's kind of emerged recently. He's been making a lot of plays. It's funny. I said to somebody recently about how, like throughout camp, Conklin and Uzama, like it didn't seem like they're making big plays. They were just kind of like, doing their job in the flat. And I'm like, it seems like they're getting a lot of hype. And then he's like, you don't really know what they've been dealing with at tight end here for a while.
That's true. 100% true. I can confirm. Yes.
Yeah. But then Conklin, he's more athletic than I realized. And Saleh really seems high on him. He was hyping up how he's like a complete tight end. He's good at run blocking. He's kind of a mismatch for linebackers. Those are some guys that jump out. And I mentioned Breece Hall. But yeah, I think Elijah Moore, he did have a drop yesterday, but overall he's been the one making all the plays. And DJ Reed, I think he shut pretty much everybody down. I think it's pretty clear that teams are going to be going after Sauce to avoid him kind of thing. And then you just see if Sauce is ready to handle that as a rookie. But that was a good signing, and he's interesting. Saleh pointed this out the other day, and then I looked, like he's not as big as you would think, but he has really long arms. He's like 6 foot, but his like arms make him like seem a lot taller than that, or he plays a lot taller than that. So those are two guys I would say.
And last one before we get you out of here, I'm going to combine you and your boy Connor Hughes together. So this was a nugget from Zack Rosenblatt's piece. Quinnen Williams, quote unquote, great camp. Okay, that looks good. And Connor Hughes added to that on Twitter saying, okay, you could say, yeah, right. You've mentioned Carl Lawson occasionally is doing the swinging turnstile of Connor McDermott. Yeah, big deal. Zack Rosenblatt got a sack on Connor McDermott, apparently in the last practice. But Connor said, like, Quinnen's having a great camp. And guess what? He's going against some guy named Laken Tomlinson and Elijah Vera Tucker, who are so widely respected, and more so Tomlinson because of, again, his standing. Also another Pro Bowler coming off of last year. He said that is the most. He's not just having a good camp. He's having a good camp against those guys, and that speaks to something as well. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Quinnen, guys like that, sometimes you don't like focus on them as much because you just like expect them to be good, but he's right. He's pretty consistently been getting in the backfield, both on runs and passes. And, I always joke about this because it's such a training camp cliche, but he's like in the best shape of his life is what he said. He really does look the part. Like and I know he wasn't healthy going into the season last year. He's healthy now. He's motivated. Clearly, I think he wants to get a big contract. And yeah, I think that they need him to be the guy that they drafted. And, he showed flashes of that last year. He played at a Pro Bowl level, I feel like, last year. Now he needs to take the next step and be a Pro Bowler and be a guy who can lead this defense and, wreak havoc every week. And I think so far the signs are very good. And this is the most talented supporting cast he's had around him, defensive line wise. I think Sheldon Rankins has had a good camp. Solomon Thomas should be like a solid guy in there that can help out. You have a healthy Carl Lawson, Jonathan Franklin Myers, Bryce Huff had a good camp. So he's surrounded by more talent, and that should make his life a little bit easier too.
Let's round this out, actually. You mentioned the health and everything. The only injury that has been so far of Jets camp is Connor McDermott yesterday at the green and white scrimmage. Do you think the Jets have just gotten lucky, and again, the dial spins for everyone in the NFL, or all these things that Robert Saleh said, the health and strength department, like, hey, reining it back early on and having these long acclimation periods, are those having great effects by no injuries? Are they just getting lucky? What's your take from an outside coming in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think I would just generally say luck because I think injuries is all luck, but I know they've had a lot of health issues in recent years, and to go this deep in training camp without any like significant injuries, I mean, knock on wood, is pretty good. Yeah, I mean, you can't really. I know DJ Reed sat out yesterday. Doesn't seem like they're concerned. Vinny Curry's been banged up. Ty Johnson, it's like nothing that sounds like is long term, and everybody besides like Greg Sinat is off the injured list. So, I mean, you feel pretty good about health-wise where they are right now. Like I mean, the preseason comes, and I'm sure there'll be injuries. Like it's just inevitable when you're at the stadium and when they're going full speed, tackling to the ground really for the first time. The joint practices, things like that. But, yeah, it's something to be happy about for sure.
Well, Zach, I want to thank you for making your debut on this gosh darn program, for Pete's sake. And we're going to be seeing and hearing each other a lot, for better or for worse, depending on your ear holes. And that is, of course, because you'll be doing some radio hits with me on Sports Talk Radio here in Central New York for fellow Jet fans that want to be listening in 11:30 every Tuesday here. And Zach, I want to say thanks, man, and subscribe to The Athletic. Follow Zack Rosenblatt on Twitter, man. And it was great having you here on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I'm also going to be doing the Can't Wait podcast. It's going to be coming back this week. So,
oh, wait, this week? Is that the drop?
That's the plan. So, I'm sure a lot of people who listen to you are also listening to that. So,
of course,
I'm looking forward to doing that. So, I hope everybody will tune in.
I don't know if you have this intel, Zach, but I guess I have to ask because I saw The Athletic release like an article promoting all their in-house podcasts, and for each one they had a blurb. And by the way, Zack Rosenblatt made the cut. That's great to see. And in the blurb, it said maybe sorta Mondays and Thursdays, TBD. But everyone else kind of had a plan. I know you're the new kid on the block. Is there any, a solidification from that standpoint on how often you guys are going to do this, or will depend on breaking news, or how's it going to work for you guys?
Yeah, I think the tentative plan is still the Monday to Monday after a game, recapping what happened, and Thursday, looking ahead to the next game kind of thing. And yeah, as stuff happens, if there's an upset, we'll try and do the pod night of. Maybe we'll do some of those. If they do a trade at the deadline, emergency pod, stuff like that. But yeah, I would say the general plan is 2 a week. Sometimes more. It'll be all schedule dependent and things like that, and how busy I am with certain things. But yeah, I'm very excited to get going on that. I did like a small Giants podcast when I was at NJ.com. It was very low budget, and I had to do everything myself. And I'm looking forward to being a part of a podcast where I have a co-host and I have a producer, Marissa, and a co-host, McMaster, and I'm very looking forward to getting used to them. And Connor built up a big audience, so I'm excited about that.
Way to go. Just take that revving engine. That's smart, Zach. That is a play. Work smarter, not harder. I love it. Tim McMaster, Marissa Morris, you got a superstar team over there at The Athletic. So again, of course, as you guys have been doing since the Connor Hughes days, like and subscribe anywhere you listen to your podcast. Zack Rosenblatt, you heard it here, is making the debut this week. Finally, we've been waiting for it, buddy. And we can't wait to hear all your insights on a weekly basis. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
There he is, Zack Rosenblatt of The Athletic, joining us here on the show. Thanks, everybody.